bring goodness to all Guyanese. And sir, if the PNC's APNU is saying that their team was a better Guyana for all Guyanese, then they can have no difficulty, or a good life for all Guyanese, they can have no difficulty with a better. This is the budget to support. Mr. Speaker, there can be no sector better than education that could demonstrate tangibly the growth over the years that the People's Progressive Party Civic has been in office. Absolutely no sector. We know that last year 40% of the budget, the national budget, was allocated and spent in the social sector. Social sector, education, housing, health, human services, spent on people, our people, the people we love. That is the kind of allocation that went to the people of Guyana last year through the budget. 15.9% of that alone was spent on educating our nation's children, on giving them quality, or the highest quality education that we've been able to give so far, on providing meals, on helping their parents outfit them for school, on providing trained teachers to put in front of the classrooms, on the other things that are necessary for our children. 15.9% of the budget, sir. The PPP has an ideology that has been evident in every single policy, every single budget from 1992 to now, that education is the one thing that will see us alleviate poverty surely. So we can be sure that if we invest in our people through education, that will be an investment in Guyana. And we have matched our commitment by tangible budgetary allocations. Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to demonstrate for this Honorable House, for you, sir, the growth that we've had over the years. In 1992, there was 5% of the national budget, a much smaller budget. I'm not talking about a nominal value. 5% of the budget was allocated towards education. Last year, I said we spent 15.9% of our budget on education. And let's talk, sir, about how results have come over the years. In 1990, general passes, that's the overall pass rate, with students getting 5 or more subjects, grades 1 to 2, and then later on 3. In 1990, we had 21% of the population passing, generally, at CSEC. In 1995, with the commitment to the people of this country and the necessary allocation in the budget, we have seen a 9% increase, and 29% of our children had passed generally. By 2000, it had moved to 46%. By 2005, it had moved to 60%. By 2010, it was 66%. So I gave you a 5-year growth. With money comes growth. Growth means our children are doing better. It means our children are more prepared for the world tomorrow. It means our children are more prepared not only to develop Guyana, but to contribute to this earth in different sectors, wherever they may find themselves in this small global village we live in. Mathematics, sir, in 1990, we had 16.8% of the population passing math. In 2000, it had moved, because we invested in the sector and in our people, to 24%. And by 2010, it moved to 34%. With investment comes growth. With our love for people comes their better preparation to meet the challenges of the world. English in 1990, we had 13.36% of our people, our children, passing English. By 2000, it was 25.8%. And by 2010, it was 59.16%. Growth, sir. You give people goodness, you invest in the people of this country, and you will see them and their children doing better. But sir, before we can invest, you have to have first a vision of where you want to see Guyana go, and then careful management and plotting and planning to get us there. We on this side of the house have shown that we are capable of doing that, sir. We've shown how results have changed over the years. And so we were talking about impact of the budget. And impact, as Bishop Edwards said, impact, it appears the definition has been skewed to mean only if something bad is happening. But impact means good. There's positive growth. There is positive growth. And so it does not mean only good. We would be on first on this side of the house to tell you we're not happy or 59% pass in English. We're not happy with that. We want to see 100% of our children that we enroll and we sign up for exams pass English, and we will get there because we can. We can plan for it. We can strategize around it. And so on this, if the population were wondering, it is us that can be trusted to take the nation's children forward. We have shown how we can do that. We hear now every CXC time, we tell the nation, the Ministry of Education tells this nation what we have done in mathematics and English. We tell the nation how unhappy we are with some of these grades. But you know why we didn't know that only 13% of our children were passing English in 1990? Because we didn't have that information. There was no transparency at that time. Sir, we know last year, out of eight awards granted by the Caribbean Examinations Council, Guyana, our Guyanese children, were given 5. We won 5. What are the 5 we won, sir? We won the best overall student. And that person was Yogita Prasad from Anna Regina Multilateral. We won the best performer in sciences, Cecil Cox from Queen's College. We won the best performer in business education, Sasha Woodruff from Queen's College. We won the best performer in technical vocational education, Zamina Rashid from Essequibo. This student also wrote for the first time in the history of this region, not the country, the history of the CARICOM region, 20 subjects. She got 81.22. We got the best performer in humanities, a young lady going to school in Region 3. Her name is Rafina Mustafa. From 2006, the only things we didn't get were the short story, the best performer in visual arts 2-dimensional, the best performer in visual arts 3-dimensional. We're going for it. We're going for it. We're going to get all 8 of these awards before the next 5 years are over, sir. And from 2006 to 2013, except for 2010, Guyana has brought home through our children, because of the investment we've been making in them, the best overall performer for the region. From 2006 to 2013 consecutively, except for 2010. Sir, when we talk about these things, what it means could get lost in the numbers and the applause and the celebration of these children. But when we could graduate from Anna Regina Multilateral, 90-something% of our children attending there, graduate them as passing CSEC. We have just placed them in a position where they're competitive in this country, in this world. We've just made them better than their parents were. We've just prepared them to give their families better than they have had. We've just prepared them to help lead this country from now into the future. Mr. Speaker, that's what happens when our children do well. So to do anything to take away from the ability of our children doing well would be to rob this country, would be to rob those children themselves and their families of a good life. And it would go against the very themes and promises that opposition parties have been making towards people about a good life and so on for all Guyana. this budget comes at a great time when we are just concluding our strategic plan. That we're just finishing a 5-year period where we saw in most areas we exceeded what we had projected. We have some work to do in some areas. We have recognized that. We have reviewed this very carefully, and we know where we want to go for the next 5 years. So we're in the process of collating what all our stakeholders have said would be best for Guyana's children, best for Guyana as a country. And we will be publishing our strategic plan shortly. This is what this budget allows us to begin the first year, implementing the first year of the strategic plan, sir. Some of the things we want to do, we want 80% teachers by the end of this plan period. We want to see at least 50% of our children reading at the grade 4 level. We want to see universal secondary education achieved in Guyana. These are some of the things that we've planned. So it's a great time, a good budget, a very relevant budget. Most people couldn't wait until Ashley Singh finished reading the budget, honorable member. We wanted to know what was in it and how much of year 1 we would be able to do. We also are in the process, sir, which we will lay before this National Assembly shortly, finalizing education bill. The last Education Act, Mr. Speaker, was passed in 1876, and as far as we've been able to discern, it was last amended in 1976, so as you may be able to imagine, it does not meet the needs of modern 2014 Guyana. And so we're in the process of finalizing that. For the first time, we will have the pleasure also of reading the final draft along with regulations under the bill that would guide the implementation of the Act. Mr. Speaker, we will also be laying shortly, or making effective shortly, regulations under the National Accreditation Council. And that is something that we're working feverishly on right now. Sir, whatever I will tell you shortly about how we're going to achieve universal quality education in our country is based on consultations that we have frequently across this country. Whatever is contained in this budget is as a result of frequent consultations with the people of Guyana, the people who matter. And so even though there was a refusal by the AFC and APNU to come to Dr. Ashley Singh to make their views known, to have their input in the budget, our people, including the supporters of these two delinquent parties who did not turn up to these consultations, have said what they wanted in this budget. Nary a week goes by, sir, without me and very senior officers in this ministry going all over the country, talking to our students, our parents, our teachers, other stakeholders about what we want. Presently, I see the CPCE head principal who was not here, Ms. Viola Rowe, who was not here on Friday because she had to go to Berbice to conduct a consultation on the draft professional standards for teachers. Mr. Hudson, the ACO primary, was in Region 1 2 days prior to that. We are out every day hearing from our teachers, our students, our parents, what it is we want. We have implemented a new policy that every time we're going to expand infrastructure, build new schools, we're going to go out, take all our documents with us, all the BOQs and the drawing and so on, have a community meeting with all who would come, but specifically we invite PTAs and staff and parents and students and religious groups and so on, and regions and our RDCs and NDCs and so on in the area. And we describe what we're going to do, and then we leave with them documents so that they could keep a close eye on what is happening in the school so that we can get quality work. Because we recognize, sir, that we're very unhappy with the fact that sometimes we get shoddy work. That does not mean all contractors give us shoddy work, but we have been robbed. The country has been robbed a couple of times, and we want to make sure that when we do things, we get for value for money, and that's how we do it. We're also, sir, establishing, going to launch shortly a website that is going to be interactive. It's going to have all our documents and policies and textbooks and past exam papers, and it's going to have a feature that would allow persons to, children, to answer exam questions, and then we send them an email with what results they got and what was right and what was wrong. Children from grades 1 to 6, we're working on secondary soon. There was also going to be a feature where every Thursday between 7:30 and 9, members of the public could chat with the minister and senior officers in the ministry on scheduled topics. We have a Facebook page that is very active. These are all things, sir, we've done to make sure we can hear from the people we serve so that we can serve them better. These are things we have done to make sure we can get our messages out, get our information out when we have information to get out. Mr. Speaker, it is very important, it is hugely important that we tighten, that we fine-tune our relationship, our partnerships with parents and with other stakeholders. We are absolutely sure that a student in our care will not have as much and will not be as much as they can be except there is parental or home involvement. For all the children who've done well, we can trace it back to one thing. A good school system, sound investment in the education sector, and involvement of their families. Not necessarily wealthy families, but families who stay up and work foot to foot, in common parlance, with their children. Families who get up at night to make sure their children are eating, not necessarily fancy meals, but parents who are involved in their children's lives. We just did research, sir, limited because of the numbers. We have about 710 students who are now coming into nursery school. So they were not in the formal education system before. Some of them went to daycares, and we found that the things children should know at 3-6, like basic shapes and numbers and recognizing and being able to recite their ABCs and counting and basic biographical information, what's your name, where do you live, how old you are. We found that only 32% of our children use this. And that for us is a bit worrying. What it is their children need to know, and then two, tell them how it is they can use their natural environments, not buying charts and gadgets, but your natural environments that teach the things children need to learn. For example, if you have to teach colors, then the grass is green and the sky is blue. You don't have to buy a chart for that. Bring the red bucket. Here is mommy's orange dress. That is that is a responsibility we have in the Ministry of Education. But I use this opportunity, sir, to make a plea to parents of this country that going forward today, even if you can't read, even if you can't write, I know parents spend their lives trying to make their children's lives better. Good parents do that. Make a pledge today that going forward, parents are going to partner with the ministry, listen to us, hear what we're saying, and do the things we're asking them to do to make sure their children are best prepared.
Other member, you may will require an extension, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I propose that the honorable member be granted 15 minutes to continue our presentation.
Please proceed on.
Mr. Speaker, this year we want to get a couple of things right. So how do we get the basics right? The budget provides for us to be able to collaborate with the local government ministry and provide adequate furniture for every single child in this country. The budget is going to allow us, we've written our own nursery readers, sir, and the budget is going to allow us to print this and give in nursery so that they could be better prepared. This year's budget will ensure that every child in the primary school system gets the very basic texts, mathematics, English, social studies, science. We've just written our own, led by Mr. Marcel Hudson, ACO Primary, and the nursery readers were written by a team led by Ingrid Trotman, ACO Nursery, that's Assistant Chief Education Officer Nursery, and they're called the Roraima readers. The primary readers that we're writing now, we have to write it, sir, because we cannot afford to buy books that are published. And when we buy those books, we can't give it to every child. So we want to make sure that we in Guyana use our skill and expertise, which we have in abundance, to give our children the tools they need to make them prepared. We're presently writing our own readers from grades. We're going to be called the Atlantic Readers. And this is a draft of where we are. We believe this is going to be the envy of the Caribbean. They're closely aligned to international literacy standards and guidelines. And so working with this, perfecting this, mastering the work in here will make sure we have children who can read by the time they're grade 4. We invite, sir. This budget is going to allow us, sir, in secondary school to offer to every child mathematics books, English books, textbooks in the single sciences. And we're going to be able to continue to deliver in a timely way exercise books to all our children. Mr. Speaker, every secondary school in 2014 will, by the end of 2014, will be equipped with a computer laboratory that will allow our children to learn online, learn through technology, and to make them better prepared for the world that uses information technology now as a matter of necessity. What is important, Mr. Speaker, we will be importantly improving how we address special education needs. Mrs. Walda Lawrence had said during her presentation that it was a group of persons that we were leaving behind. Well, I'm assuming, although I'm probably wrong, I'm assuming she was speaking of the nation leaving that group of persons behind. And she did mention, sir, the honorable member, that we had the blind students at the blind unit at St. Rose's. Those students moved since the 2nd of September, and they've been in another far more friendly environment since then. It would be good if members of this House, as a matter of being responsible, informed themselves before they came in here and made statements. But sir, we would be the first to tell you that we are not happy with the way the education sector has been catering for our students with special education needs. We're not happy with that, and we are recognizing that we're not doing what we're supposed to do. We're not preparing our children with special education needs as best as we can and making them capable of reaching their maximum potential. We embarked on a consultation across this country which informed what we're going to do for the next 5 years. People have told us what they want. They want us, sir, to make sure we look at how we are preparing our teachers. And so one of the things that is going to be done as a matter of priority over the next 5 years is to make sure all the teachers coming out of CPC are prepared for integrating children, special education needs children into the classroom. We are going to be looking at making sure our buildings are more friendly and that we can prepare or that we can cater for children with disabilities that don't make them like visual and other disabilities that do not affect their ability to learn. Mr. Speaker, we are committed and we are making sure that every new building we build complies with the Persons Living with Disability Act. That is, we have ramps and we have other toilet facilities and so on that are appropriate. Teacher training, sir, I heard from we last year, Mr. Speaker, continued the upgrading program in the hinterland communities in regions 1, 8, and 9, permitting more persons to be eligible to access the Trained Teacher Certificate program. And from 159 teachers were certified as completed in 2013. Mr. Speaker, for the first time, we did something that was painful to us, but that was very necessary. And students in the CPC who failed 3 or more subjects were asked to apply again to come back into the school. We also are designing for the first time a teacher appraisal document. Our teachers, our lecturers at CPC, I believe it is 23 lecturers between CPC and UG who are doing masters and 2 PhDs so that they can be better prepared to train our teachers. Mr. Speaker, I heard Mrs. Walda Lawrence, I think it was, who said the teachers are leaving in hundreds and droves. It's not our record, again misinformed. In fact, we have a different problem, and our problem is our teachers are now returning. I wouldn't say in hundreds and droves, because I want to be honest, but they are returning when they broke their contracts, and we now have a problem. How do we, these teachers broke their contracts and went away. The policy is when you come back, you have to pay off what you owed before you can start, but we want them. These are Guyanese, we don't want to put them out. So we're trying to work out how we could get around the breaking of the contract, but we do not have a record of teachers migrating in droves or hundreds or whatever other ill-informed message was sent to us. We intend, sir, to, in this year's budget, achieve universal secondary education. That is, in many regions, that is, sir, that every child of secondary age can access a general secondary education. We will be limited because of our geography. I believe it was Sydney Alcock, who Honorable Member, Mrs. Sydney Alcock, who said, children don't want to go to the dorms, so we have to put down high schools in every village. Sir, I would advise him to get information from Mrs. Ali and other people who understand that we cannot build a school in every village. Assuming we were to find oil and we had all the money in the world, it still would not be in the best interest of those children. And so what this year's budget will allow us to do, sir, is to achieve universal secondary education in regions 5. Let's go through the region. Region 1, we have some transportation, boats and engines, because sometimes it's not building a school, but it's getting children to the school that's already built. Region 2, we pretty much already have universal secondary education. We need about 8 classrooms. Region 3, we are building back the Zeeburg Secondary School, which will accommodate the students from Zeeburg Secondary and St. John's. And we intend to build a 1,000-person secondary school at Parkway Harmony. Region 4, we are building a secondary school at Soesdijk and one at Lusitnan to take off the children who are in primary tops, because that is not the most conducive learning place for them. Region 5, we're extending the Maikoni Secondary and doing some other things across the region that would see Region 5 this year having universal secondary education. Region 6, there's some construction work going on at Tutorial Academy and some other places that would see, except for some transportation needs, Region 6 having universal secondary education. Region 7, sir, needs another school. We need to build a secondary school somewhere up the Mansfield River. There's talk about whether it should be Jawala or whether we should expand Warmadam. We're looking at it. Because of where that school is, it's going to cost our country somewhere about $600 or $700 million. So that's not something that we're doing this year. We are looking at how best we can do that, but we know those children need another school, and we commit in this government to building that other school. Region 8, we're expanding the Malia Secondary, and Region 8 would almost have universal secondary after that. And Cato is being built and will be completed this year or next year. Region 9, sir, we have some work to do on schools like St. Ignatius, and that will begin shortly. And Region 10, we have pretty much achieved universal secondary education. This year, sir, we will be able to, with the allocations in the budget, bring in many of the regions and be able to better prepare our children for Guyana tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, the University of Guyana is where our children attend to get their tertiary education. There are many courses that are being written there. Many students who are being prepared there. In fact, I would like to think that many of us in this house at some point attended the University of Guyana. We offer quality service in our various fields. There is an important project, a $10 million project that's happening right now, Mr. Speaker, that is seeing $10 million US, the reform of 15 curriculum and 14 buildings being refurbished completely. We also have, which for me is extremely exciting, a grant that we're giving to lecturers, academic staff, that would see 40 different types of research done that will that directly contribute to our low carbon development strategy. One of them that's being done right now is how to use Corolla how the relationship between Corolla and cancer. In fact, I can say specifically the effects of Mordicocharantia, that's Cariella, on secondary and primary cancer cell lines. This is something that could benefit the world. This is what we're doing at the University of Guyana presently. Cutting edge research. We also are doing 4 feasibility studies, and I think this is what's important for the nation, are expected to be completed. We will be looking at the human resources management, and then we're doing a feasibility study, and this for me is exciting, for the establishment of a Center for Excellence for the study of biodiversity. And that would be a center that would serve the planet, that would serve the people of this world, and so I'm looking forward to that. Mr. Speaker, not a very important area that we will begin looking at this year, and the budget is funding it, is a hinterland education improvement project. We are the best place in the hinterland regions than we've ever been before. Over the last 5 years alone, we have created 400 new places for students in dormitories. And that's allowing 400 new students every single year to access an education that they would not have been able to access before. We do know, though, Mr. Speaker, that while we are the best place we have ever been, we can do better in certain areas. And so what are we doing? We're studying with the people of the hinterland. So we will be going village to village, talking to parents and teachers and students about what are the gaps. You have a school, but does your school have trained teachers? And the answer is no. Do we have housing to put trained teachers in? And the answer is no. Then how do we build the housing? Do you have textbooks? Do you have exercise books? Is your school feeding working? Do we have space in the dormitories to accommodate the students who are coming from far-flung areas? So we will begin that shortly, sir, to be implemented as soon as we have completed that study. It would make a great headline for us to say we're ready right now, because we have much of a significant portion of the information we need. But it would be undemocratic if we did not hear first from the people of those villages what it is they would want to see happen too. And that is going to begin shortly. Mr. Speaker, essentially this budget allows us in the National Assembly, gives us an opportunity to treat Guyanese well. It gives us an opportunity to help prepare Guyana's tomorrow today. It gives us an opportunity as a house, sir, not as a PPP civic, because we will do it alone if we have to. But we really do want the support of the opposition as parties, because their people, their supporters, would expect that they would do what is right for the children of those supporters. And so, while we would do it alone if we have to, as we have been doing for the last 20 years, we would really appreciate the support of the members of the opposition. And I say here without reservation, sir, that I could never know all that Amna Ali knows. She's honorable member. She's been a head teacher for many years. She has experience that I don't have. I want to hear from her. But wanting to hear from her is a contribution to what the government's program is. It cannot be to take over the government. I would like to hear from other teachers and parents in the opposition, sir. And that is why when the opposition as leaders don't work with us, we work with their constituents anyway, because we want to hear from them. Mr. Speaker, Nelson Mandela said,
5 minutes are up, please.
Mr. Speaker, Nelson Mandela, a wise man, said that education is the most powerful weapon in which you can change the world. And Malcolm X, another very wise man, said that education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. Sir, these are two people who are world-renowned and who no sensible person, whose wisdom no sensible person will question. These are people telling us clearly If you want to prepare a country tomorrow, for next year, for next 20 years, invest in education. These are people who are telling us clearly that the most powerful weapon to change this Guyana would be education. And here is a government that understands that and invests its most money in the sector of education. Sir, our philosophy and our ideology in the PPP Civic matches wisdom of the world. Yet you hear from no lesser a person than the opposition leader, retired Brigadier Granger, that this budget has nothing. It has to mean that the opposition is incapable of seeing how important education is to the nation, and so I commit these quotations to these members so that they could understand that the fact that we have continuously invested in education means that we are preparing Guyana for 20 years down the line. The fact that we have continuously invested in education means that we want to change Guyana from the place it is to the place we like. It is because we have invested in education that we've moved from a low-income developing country where we could get aid all over the place to now a medium developing country, medium income country. So sir, we in the PPP Civic, we understand how important education is. The failure of the opposition to understand how important this huge allocation is really speaks to their lack of vision. And I ask them, sir, to come on board. Mr. Speaker, I am the regional geographical MP for region number 5. And I'd like to tell you briefly in my 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Would you like to Sir, we are in region number 5. This is a rice farming, cattle farming community. Mr. Speaker, as the daughter of a rice farm, I can tell you the lives of rice farmers are not easy. If it's not a paddy bug one day, it's a drought, it's a heavy rainfall, it's bad irrigation, it's us being below sea level, it is, and that's why we have bad irrigation. It's a hard life, but these are people who last year alone contributed $28 billion to the economy. These are people who can say thank you. These are people whose families we will support and celebrate. And so this thing about how we will take away with $500 million and we were not, there's no giving with a pleased heart of the $500 million, it's really spiteful and selfish because these are Region 5 is also the largest, the region who grows the largest cattle in the Caribbean, sir. And so Region 5's cattle farmers, we celebrate them too. Cattle farmers across this country. Mr. Speaker, he's not here, he got away, but I wanted to pass a message on publicly to Mr. Greenidge. The people, I had a meeting at Cotton Tree last 2 weeks Thursday, and the sugar workers there asked me if I could tell him they want to see him. They want him to tell them that he's not going to support the sugar industry and their lives and their children's livelihood, and don't hide behind a camera when he's saying it. They were telling me, sir, Mr. Messenger, they asked me to deliver that message to Mr. Greenidge, so they'll hear me delivering it publicly. Mr. Speaker, because we have farmers we want to support in Region 5, and because we have so much of our economy benefiting and our people, the whole country benefiting from Region 5, there is a significant amount of resources that is being plugged into this year's budget to support those farmers and their families. There's going to be major rehabilitation to the Burma Branch Road at the cost of $14 million, almost $15 million. Burma, sir, you would know, really is a farm to market road for many, and a lot of, more than 3,000 residents and farmers will benefit from the rehabilitation of this road. There's going to be a construction of the east street of the street at East Side Line Dam at the Edward. There's the cost of almost $10 million. We're going to be upgrading the street from Main Road to 4th Cross Street at Bush Lot at the cost of almost $4 million. This will benefit about 1,500 residents, sir. There's going to be a rehabilitation of the sideline dam at New Scheme Bush Lot that will benefit more than 1,000 residents at a cost of more than almost $8 million. Mr. Speaker, there's going to be a construction of a structure at Blairmont Number 1 settlement at the cost of $3 million and a structure at the Edward West Bank Namarawa, about 150. Mostly residents and fishermen will benefit at the cost of almost $2 million. There is going to be the construction of a timber bridge also at Bush Lot. Mr. Speaker, there are going to be rehabilitation of streets in the areas of Experiment, West Coast, Berbice at more than $5 million. In Hope, West Coast, Berbice at more than $3.3 million. And in Waterloo at West Coast, Berbice at $3.4 million. There's going to be a general rehabilitation to the Coco Cabana Streets, Belladrum at $4 million. Middle Walk, Bath Settlement at $2 million. And Paris Street, Bel Air at $4.4 million. There's going to be general rehabilitation to the Timber Bridge at Good Faith, Maiponi at more than $4.3 million. And like I said, sir, Region 5 this year is going to have the extension of the Fort Wellington Secondary School. We're going to see the provision of a bus. We're going to see Region 5 achieving universal secondary education acceptance and transportation. Mr. Speaker, I'm wrapping up. We know in the Ministry of Education that while we're the best place we've ever been, we are not happy with where we are. And we promise you, sir, we promise the people of this nation that we will work every day, very hard, tirelessly, to fulfill our commitment to Guyana, that we will deliver to your children what is best for them. We require the partnership of parents and indeed of everybody in this National Assembly and all stakeholders in this nation. And so, sir, in this examination of where we are now, where we want to be, there will be some, as Dr. Luncheon calls, unfrocking. We will have to undress ourselves, check to see where we are, and then get clothed again and get back on the road. We have no problems with that self-appraisal. We have no problems with checking to see where we are, because we know in the PPP Civic that education is the best place it has been in the history of this country. I thank you, sir.
Our members, I invite Madam Ali, Shadow Minister of
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this highly politicized document referred to as the budget. We look at what was supposed to have been done in 2013 and its preceding years. We hope that the government can get serious. Mr. Speaker, I shall elaborate on the various aspects as I proceed with my presentation. A lot of money is spent on infrastructure in this ministry. Yet the outcome and outcome dismal. And I will come to that later on. Sir, if we were to do an assessment of what we got from the large sum that was budgeted in the 2013 budget, we will see that the real beneficiaries are not the nation's children. You're talking about a few. I am talking about the masses, sir. The education sector. Mr. Speaker, page 38, paragraph 470, that was the budget speech, speaks to the new education strategic plan for 2014-2018. Sir, strategic plans are nothing new. So don't let it sound like an innovation, Madam Minister. But it is the outcome from what you put in. Sir, let me ask two questions on enriching our young people. One, with the establishment of technical schools in regions 3 and 5, for example, why haven't they been adequately staffed and programs worked out? Development in education is not to provide buildings alone. Your programs and resources must complement each other so that you can measure your input. To come to this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, and speak of a few achievements is not good enough, Madam Minister. Secondly, sir, of what benefit graduating from the Tech Fox schools in the world of work? The students of the Leonora School, for example, are getting the royal runaround to get their certificates, even if after they graduate. Sir, when we look at the program performance statements for education delivery at page 208 of volume 2, and under the impact it says, I quote, ensure that the education system within the region produce human resources with the appropriate knowledge, skills, and attitude to meet their own personal development and the social, economic, and technological needs. Oh, Mr. Speaker, words with no reality. How appropriate has that training been to the graduates? Did it actually satisfy our hospitality industries? Sir, a careful look must be taken and an analysis done, and corrective action must be taken. Infrastructure of schools. Today, in this honorable house, there can be no vacillation by any minister. Today, no minister can say, well, I am dealing with policy, and it is somebody else's job to deal with infrastructure. Again, at page 38, paragraph 4701, the Honorable Minister of Finance wrote, and I quote, a sum of 2.7 billion was spent on the infrastructure of schools and other facilities, unquote. Mr. Speaker, in 2014, 2.9 billion is allocated for this purpose. Sir, what did we get in 2013? In 2013, we had the pupils of Santa Rosa Primary, for example, fetching water for daily use, cleaning school, and of the formal learning situation. We are fetching wood in K2 and spending a lot of time out of the formal learning situation. In Region 8, Mr. Speaker, over $438 million was budgeted for education for 2013. And Chinapao, Tusanang, among other schools, do not have proper furniture. Teachers' quarters have 2 VSOs from the United Kingdom, do not have any furniture. The toilet and bathroom not working. We are dealing with infrastructure of these schools. There is no light because they don't have batteries. Solar is dysfunctional. Can somebody tell me what has happened to the $438 million for education in region number 8?
Speak after the minister.
Sir,
Before the minister.
Ministers Manichan, Whitaker, and former Minister Ganga Prasad must tell us where the money has gone. Can this PPPC government tell me whether discrimination is at work? Can this government tell this National Assembly whether it is because region number 8 is under the political leadership of the AFC that they are stifling the people of that region? Well, Mr. Speaker, I have news for the PPPC. They will not get back the leadership of region number 8. Rather, they have more to lose than to gain. We have the children of the Northwest Secondary School all over the place for extended periods where their secondary school should have been completed within a given time frame. Hence, children are spending a lot of time outside of the formal education system. A few days ago, Mr. Speaker, an officer of the Central Ministry was rushed in from Georgetown to Maburumo to settle issues of electricity before the budget, to get the school board of the school, to get the children to go into the building. But I hope that an accurate report has come back because the board has rejected it. They are demanding proper completion before their children can occupy the school.
That's right.
We have protest action in Port Kaitumo for non-functional toilet facilities. And hence children were out of their classrooms for long period. Sir, we have total neglect of the Liberty Primary School in the Pomeroon River, causing non-delivery of education for long periods. Mr. Speaker, education in the Lower Pomeroon is totally neglected. Why should this be so? How do we expect the children in those communities performing well in the education sector when their school time is utilized doing chores? Sir, I do not wish to go on to chronicle more examples in other regions, but to tell the government that the 2.7 billion you took to do the very projects you named in 2013, some of which I named a few moments ago, the monies apparently went into thin air. or further, I say no. As the lawyers will say, I rest my case. In 2014, you asked for more. We don't know if it will suffer the same fate, but I believe so. But sir, the underlying fact is how does the government intend to ensure equal access to quality education? Equal access, I repeat, to quality education for all children and young people of the region, when it is normal for this government to neglect and not monitor certain communities. I listened to the Honorable Minister a short while ago, who was outlining projects in region number 5. I come from region number 5.
That's right, that's right.
I come from a village called the Edward Village, next door to Cotton Tree, Honorable Minister. And if you hear yourself naming those areas, the developmental works will be taken care of. It is a ratio of 10 to 1. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the Honorable Minister should examine those areas and see how well this government is doing with discrimination. Universal secondary education. The initiative of achieving universal secondary education is a welcoming one. Sir, giving a political commentary on universal secondary education is not achieving it. The program must be minutely worked out and monitored. This is not only about buildings, Madam Minister, but also about what we put in the buildings. What resources do we make available for these secondary schools to be functional? Mr. Speaker, Honorable Juan Echil, my good friend, says that this government has achieved 100% universal secondary education. Well, sir, if that is not laughable, what is? Take IT labs, for example. The IT labs being spoken about. How useful will it be to have these labs and no teachers? Sir, when I speak, I like to give references. Who will not welcome IT labs? The opposition certainly welcome IT labs. Who will not welcome being computer literate? Who will not welcome advanced technology? But we of the APNU cannot sit idly by and allow the incompetencies of this government to prevail. Right across in region number 3, Mr. Speaker, at the Parika Salem Secondary School, the IT lab is not functional. I will only give a few examples. Right across in region 3, and here we're not going far in the interior, you know. In region 3 at Potentia, the computers for the IT lab have been declared obsolete. There is defective electricity. How could the obsolete computers and defective electricity make IT labs functional? APNU demands functional computers. You and government, you finance. And the services therewith to be useful, especially 500 teachers. I ask the question, where and what numbers for each entity? Sir, this is not about plucking out figures out of thin air, but you must work towards achieving your objective. The end results matter. We spend and we must achieve, and the beneficiaries must be the nation's children. I now turn to tertiary education. At page 40, para 476, the Honorable Minister wrote that 1.4 billion is allocated towards the operation of both university campuses. Mr. Speaker, isn't that ridiculous? The University of Guyana cannot pay their electricity bills. They don't have proper chalkboards. They have poor toilet facilities. You will open a university at Milo. And in any place